Formula 1 has a lot of tracks. There are 24 circuits on the 2025 calendar in about 20 different countries. Now, these circuits are very varied, to say the least. You've got the high-speed nature of the likes of Silverstone, Spa and Monza. You've got the slow, twisty streets of Singapore and Monaco. And you've got a bunch of other circuits in between there, all with their unique characteristics. But something that's not really ever talked about when it comes to these Formula 1 circuits is who actually owns them? Who actually owns the tracks that these Formula 1 events are taking place on? Is it Formula 1? Is it governments? Is it private companies, public companies, charities, non-profit organisations? Well, kind of a mix of the lot, really. And there's not really an out-and-out certain case where it's like, yeah, all of the tracks are owned by this same entity or a similar entity, depending on which country they're in. Now, we've done some research here on the F1Chronicle.com, and we've got the majority of the circuits here and who actually owns them. I believe there's 18 in total that we're going through here. Now, that's not the complete calendar. There are some races where the events are quite new, so it's not actually certain who owns these tracks, and it's a bit strange with some of them. Saudi Arabia and Las Vegas being two of those. I mean, who actually owns the streets of Jeddah and Las Vegas? The governments of Saudi Arabia and the United States, respectively. It's a bit murky, and the information's not as readily available there. We know who actually puts the events on. Formula 1 itself actually runs the Las Vegas Grand Prix, but who actually owns the streets of Las Vegas? The city of Las Vegas? I don't know. I have no idea on that one, but we do have information on the vast majority of circuits here, 18 of them, and I've kind of broke them into different categories, and even that's a bit difficult because it's how do you categorize certain ones, and I'll go through that as I explain. Some are quite cut and dry, some are a bit more murky in terms of what you would actually classify them, whether it's a government, a public company, non-profit. I'll explain as I go. But anyway, let's get into this, guys. Who actually owns all of the F1 circuits? I'm going to go through the vast majority of them here on the F1Chronicle.com. And we'll start with the Yas Marina circuit in Abu Dhabi. This track has hosted the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix every season since it came onto the calendar in 2009. And this is the first of the government-owned tracks on the calendar that we're going to go through here. The circuit is owned by the Abu Dhabi government through Abu Dhabi Motorsports Management, ADMM, which is a subsidiary of Miral Asset Management. So they are owned by a company, but that company is owned by the government. So I would say that goes into the government category to start with. And it's a similar story for another Gulf race here, the Bahrain International Circuit. This is owned by the Bahrain International Circuit Company, which is a subsidiary of, here we go, Mumtakalet Holding Company, which is part of the Sovereign Wealth Fund of the Kingdom of Bahrain. So it is owned by a wealth fund, but that wealth fund is for the government. So it's pretty much owned, I would say, by the government. I would put that into a government / head of state one. And then I'm sure some people might think with these two that are coming up, well, those are heads of state. Are they government, especially in a European nation like these two here? But I would just put them into government. Heads of state, government, parliament, presidents, kings, royalty, you know, they all run the country in some capacity, whether that is ceremonial or actually de facto. Let's not get into politics like that. But the next two I'm going to do here, two are in neighbouring countries here. Both races are in a sense, in a weird way, under threat, or if not outright leaving the calendar. The first one of these is Zandvoort, which is slated to have its final race, I believe 2025 this season. Coming up, it's going to be the last one, maybe 26. I can't remember off the top of my head now. These things change around anyway. It's going to leave the calendar pretty soon. But for now, the circuit is actually owned by Prince Bernhard of Orange-Nassau, which I believe is the royal family over in the Netherlands. Of course, the Netherlands being a kingdom, it's the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And he owns this through his company, Chapman Andretti Partners. Two famous names from motorsport years gone by there, and motorsport years currently going on in the case of Andretti. Of course, Mario Andretti, part of the Cadillac Racing setup, set to join Formula 1. So it is owned by a company, but it's effectively owned by a government figure. So I'm putting that one in there. Same with Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps over in neighbouring Belgium as well. That circuit is owned by the Walloon region, which is the French-speaking regional government of southern Belgium. Basically, you've got Walloon, which is the southern part of Belgium, and then the top part, which I I think it's Flanders, isn't it? The Dutch-speaking part. Do correct me if I'm wrong, Belgian subscribers. I'm so sorry. I've been to your country. It's beautiful. And I've been to this track as well. But yeah, obviously owned directly by the government pretty much there. It's managed by the Spa Grand Prix company, who have negotiated a new deal with Formula 1 to keep it on the calendar, albeit in a rotational viewpoint, going from 2026, I think is the last year-on-year race. Could be wrong there. But let's go into these next ones here, and this is where things can get a little murky in terms of whether it's government, whether it's actually something else, such as non-profit organisations. I've got quite a few in here with this one. The first of these is the Lusail International Circuit in Qatar. Now, this circuit is owned by the Qatar Motor and Motorcycle Federation, the QMM, a non-profit organisation which is dedicated to promoting motorsport in the country. Now, I say this is a bit murky because the QMFF was established in the year 2000 under the presidency of His Excellency Nasser bin Khalifa Al Attiyah, which I believe is the King of Qatar or the Emir of Qatar. I forget the name of, but anyway, the head of state of Qatar, basically, at the time at least. With the goal of developing and supporting motorsport activities in Qatar, the federation is responsible for organising and managing various motorsport activities at Lusail International Circuit, such as the Qatar Motorcycle Grand Prix, which has been in MotoGP since 2004, and more recently the F1 Qatar Grand Prix as well. It's technically a non-profit organisation, so I'm going to put it in there just because it's Qatar and not a European round or, you know, a Western actual nation there. I'm not going to judge that on that. It's a non-profit organisation. That's what they say they are, so they're going in there. Same with Imola as well over in Italy. The circuit there is owned by the Automobile Club of Bologna, a non-profit organisation that promotes motorsport activities in the Emilia-Romagna region. Of course, Imola, the home of the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Previously as well, the home of the San Marino Grand Prix, and actually hosted the Italian Grand Prix in 1980, I think it was, the only year when Monza was not on the calendar. We got Monza coming up later though. But yeah, the ACB, the Automobile Club of Bologna, was founded in 1904 and has been instrumental in development and management of the Imola circuit since it was constructed back in 1953. The organisation is responsible for the organising of various motorsport events at the circuit, including the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, which returned to the calendar. Well, it was actually the first ever Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, but Imola returning to the calendar for the first time in Formula 1 in 2020 since 2006 when it hosted the San Marino Grand Prix. Monaco is the last of these non-profit organisations. So the circuit is unique in that it is owned and managed by the Automobile Club de Monaco, the ACM, I should say, which is a non-profit organisation that's responsible for organising and promoting motorsport events in the Principality of Monaco. To be honest, I'm surprised it wasn't owned by the Monegasque royal family, but it is not. It is technically owned by a non-profit organisation. So let's get into these next ones here. These are public companies. So these are companies that are basically set up by the government. They are part of the nation, if you were. They're not private. So when you think of public, think of things like in the UK, such as the NHS. That is effectively a public company. That is a public service that anybody can use, which is why we love it. Anyway, the Interlagos circuit in Brazil is the first one of these. Now, the owners of this has changed hands a few times over the years, hence why it's technically not known as the Brazilian Grand Prix anymore. It's technically known as the Grand Prix of Sao Paulo, because the circuit is actually owned by the city of Sao Paulo and is managed by the Sao Paulo Turismo, which is the tourism board of Sao Paulo over in Brazil, a public company that is responsible for promoting tourism and events in the city. So that is why it's known as the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, but everybody calls it the Brazilian Grand Prix. And they always will, because it's the only F1 race in Brazil. So yeah, it's changed hands a few times. I'm glad it's still on the calendar, but technically the Brazilian Grand Prix has not been on the calendar since 2019, I think was the last official year. Melbourne in Australia, the Albert Park Circuit. Now, this is owned by the Melbourne Grand Prix Corporation, which is a government-owned company and is responsible for the organisation and promotion of the Australian Grand Prix. I've put this into public because it's not really owned by the government of Australia. I mean, it is indirectly, but I would say there's enough separation there to say this is a public company, so I think that is fair in that regard. And the last one of these is Singapore, the Marina Bay Street Circuit, and this is owned by the Singapore Tourism Board, which is a government agency responsible for promoting tourism in the city-state of Singapore. And I've been to the track when the race hasn't been on, and it is a wonderful part of the world for sure. Private companies now, so we all know what private companies are. Think Amazon, think Apple, things that are, devolved from the government, private companies, things that are listed on stock exchanges and stuff like that. That's the easiest way to kind of remember it, really. I got 3 of them here for you, starting with Mexico City, the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez over in the capital city of Mexico. The circuit is owned by the government of Mexico itself and is managed by the corporation oh god, my Spanish is being tested here, Interamericana de Entretenimiento. I am so sorry, guys. I did GCSE Spanish and that is terrible. That is so, there is so many big words there. Basically, the International Entertainment Corporation, which is a leading international live entertainment company in Latin America. I know it's certainly owned by the government, so you could put it in the other category for that, but I would say that's a private corporation effectively at that point. And in my research, they have come up as a private organization as well, a private company, so I'm going to stick them in private there. I understand why you would probably put them in a different category, but according to themselves, they say that they're a private company, so I will trust them on that. Also a private company, no surprise here, the US of A, COTA, the Circuit of the Americas over in Austin, Texas, host of the United States Grand Prix since 2012. This circuit is owned and operated by the Circuit of the Americas LLC, a private company founded by racing enthusiast and businessman Bobby Epstein. And the last of these private companies is, of course, the Red Bull Ring, unsurprisingly owned by Red Bull. They are owned by Red Bull GmbH, which is basically the German equivalent. I know they're Austrian, but they speak German. The German equivalent of LLC over in the United States. But yeah, basically that's what it is. And the Austrian energy drink company, through its subsidiary, actually owns this Project Spielberg GmbH and Co. KG. It stands for probably some very long words, as is usually the case in German language. So now there's a mix here, some public and private companies owning some of these. I'll explain what I mean by these. So the first of these is Barcelona. Circuit de Catalunya Barcelona is owned by owned by a consortium of public and private entities, including the Catalan government, so public government, and the Real Automobile Club de Catalunya, and the City Council of Montmello as well. So there's a mix of public and private in there, really, with that one. So that's why I've put Barcelona in there. Baku in Azerbaijan as well. That kind of falls into murky waters. So the circuit is owned and managed by the Baku City Circuit Operations Company, BCC, which is a subsidiary of Azgranata, which is a joint venture between the Azerbaijan Ministry of Youth and Sports and Pasha Construction, a private construction company. So private on the company side and also public in terms of that sounds like a department of the government to me, so I'm going to put that there. And the last pair here, owned by clubs, not nightclubs, not football clubs, automobile clubs. Silverstone is owned by the British Racing Drivers Club, the BRDC, which is a prestigious organisation founded in 1928 to promote the interests of British motorsports. Now you might say, wait a minute, what about those clubs for things like Imola, the Automobile Club of Bologna? Aren't they a club? Well, yeah, they are, but they're non-profit organisations as well. The BRDC is not a non-profit organisation. Same with Monza as well. They are owned by the Automobile Club d'Italia, the ACI, which is effectively the exact same thing as the BRDC, but over in Italy. They are the Italian National Automobile Club, which is responsible for the promotion and development of motorsport in Italy. Exactly the same as Silverstone. So yeah, there we go, guys. A real mix of different owners for these different circuits. Like I said, I've gone through as many as I can find some trusty information on there. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have a suggestion for a longer form video such as this one, all ears, all happy to hear it, and I hope you enjoyed this one. And of course, if you did, I'll really appreciate it if you left us a like, a comment, subscribe to the channel, follow if you're on MSN, if you're on the other platforms, give us a like in terms of actually following us properly as well. So yeah, we'll see you soon for some more videos just like this on the F1Chronicle.com. Have a good one, guys. See you soon.